what's going on, guys? Arekkz here, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. And in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about this. This is a brand new exotic weapon, a new archetype, a trace rifle, and it goes by the name of Coldheart. Today, there was an official trailer for this weapon that was released, alongside the accompanying IGN First coverage, where they kind of delved into the process behind creating an exotic weapon, the kind of, the sort of thought process that goes through it, the actual kind of like design philosophy, all that kind of stuff like that. So as always, I've linked both those videos down below for you guys to check out. But in this video, I want to talk to you guys about the weapon, how you get it, and some of the fine print, because it is listed as a pre-order exotic. However, there are ways to get it outside of that, so I'm going to try and clear up any kind of confusion in the process. So if you do enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated. Any questions, drop them down below. But let's kick things off with the weapon itself. It looks really, really awesome. And in fact, this is a weapon we've seen doing the rounds for quite a while. Way back in the initial gameplay reveal, when they had all those weapons in the cabinet, this was actually one of those weapons. At the time, we weren't kind of given a name for it or anything, but this was one of those weapons that we have seen. So it's not exactly a huge surprise to then find out it's finally got a purpose. However, the Coldheart weapon belongs in the Omolon Weapon Foundry, and it has a liquid fuel that doubles as a coolant. They've basically said that kind of the Omolon Foundry have sort of discovered this way to create this fuel that can then be concentrated into this kind of ice-cold beam. Now, obviously, at this stage, the kind of gameplay is all sort of done through B-roll, so there's no actual inspection, so we don't have any idea as to the stats of the weapon, and more importantly, the element. It is, of course, listed as an ice-cold weapon, so it could well be a brand new element to kind of go alongside Solar, Arc, and Void, or it could just be like an ice-cold beam that also deals arc damage. At this stage, we honestly don't know. I think it'd be really cool if they introduce a new element like ice, because then that potentially opens up the, the spectrum for other ice weapons, and potentially in the future, maybe ice-focused subclasses. But at this stage, we honestly don't know, so for the time being, we just know it fires an ice-cold beam. Now, I mentioned earlier that this is a trace rifle. Now, trace rifles are a new archetype, and in fact, this will be the only trace rifle when Destiny 2 launches. They said that it will be, quote-unquote, the first and only trace rifle, but has the potential to become a new archetype. So I guess if it's one of those things that's received really well by players, maybe people really kind of like enjoy the sort of different kind of playstyle it brings to the table, then they may look into bringing more trace rifles in the future, kind of like how they, when they first introduced swords or sidearms, there weren't that many, and then, gradually as the game went on, they expanded it and added more. So to begin with, this will be the only trace rifle. It's an exotic, and it fires a long beam that you have to hold down the trigger, and the longer that beam is on the target, the more damage it does. So if any of you guys play Overwatch, you could, to a certain extent, liken it to, say, Symmetra's weapon. Not in the way that it behaves, because it doesn't lock on, but the fact that, the longer you hold down the trigger, the more damage it does. So, obviously, for this one, you'll want to, in some of the gameplay, we saw them firing on, say, a Cabal dropship or a warship, and as the weapon begins to kind of, build up and do more damage, eventually it just destroys the ship. So, obviously, this is one of those things that you're going to want to target on a weak spot. It is a pretty precise-looking weapon. I don't know, again, at this stage, whether it can crit. We had no damage numbers. I would like to think a weapon like this, given the kind of very precise beam, could crit. But, of course, the counterpoint to that being that it is a kind of constant fire-focused beam, maybe that might be a little bit OP. So, again, at this stage, only time will tell. However, it does look pretty powerful. It's, of course, a power weapon, so it is going to dish out some nice damage. And if you imagine, say, in, like, a raid encounter, and you had maybe 6 Guardians standing in a Warlock Rift getting their damage boost, maybe behind like a Titan barricade so they don't have to reload, and they can just, unload 6 of these into a boss, it could do some pretty sweet damage. I, for one, I'm super excited to check it out. I'm always like a big fan of introducing new archetypes just because it mixes things up, right? I mean, even when they added, say, the linear fusion rifle, we got a chance to test out in the beta. Might not necessarily be drastically different to some of the stuff we've had before, but again, any kind of new weapons just, lays the foundation for more varied gameplay and just different ways to tackle those encounters. However, with that out of the way, the question is, how do you get it? Now, if you saw the trailer, this is advertised as a pre-order bonus. If you pre-order Destiny 2, whether it be on Xbox One, PS4, or PC, you will get this exotic. It is not a PlayStation exclusive. That is, of course, the sniper rifle we've seen. That is the only PlayStation exclusive exotic at this stage. This, however, is a pre-order bonus. So if you pre-order Destiny, you will get this weapon. Now, at this stage, they haven't said how you'll get it, so we don't know whether it means, if you pre-order it, you get a quest in game to then get it, or whether it just literally gets delivered to your postmaster. For that much, we will, of course, just have to find out on launch day. However, the important thing is the small print. Because, of course, if you saw this and you saw nothing else, then it can seem a little bit shady. I mean, putting something like an exotic weapon behind a pre-order is a little bit out there, right? It's one thing if you put, like, an emblem behind it or an emote. I mean, they're cosmetic. They don't really impact your gameplay. But if it's something like an exotic, that's a big deal. However, when reading a little bit deeper, if you either look at the small print on the end of the trailer or you go to the IGN accompanying post, then they specify that this weapon will become available to everybody on December the 5th. So essentially, it is just a timed exclusive window to kind of like make it a pre-order bonus to begin with, obviously to try and incentivize pre-ordering. But if you don't, say if you're one of those people that doesn't necessarily want to pick up Destiny 2 on launch because you want to sort of see what the reception's like, see what the reviews say, see whether it's got legs and whatnot, or see kind of how the content unfolds further down the line, then fair enough. And if that's the case, then when you pick up the game eventually, you will still have a chance to get this weapon. On December the 5th, or following December the 5th, as it's described, they said the weapon will become available in general gameplay. So I imagine that means it can drop from bosses, maybe engrams, maybe Zur can sell it. Anything like that. The main thing is it will be added to the general gameplay flow, general gameplay loot pools, following December the 5th. So it just means that if you do pre-order it, you have sort of like a 3-month exclusive window where only people that pre-order will have the weapon, and beyond that point, it will of course be open to everyone. However, deviating from the weapon for just a moment, the date December the 5th is actually quite interesting. If you guys remember the DLC that we know is coming for Destiny, we of course know there is going to be an Osiris expansion and a Rasputin expansion. One of them is slated to drop winter 2017. Now of course we don't have any dates for that, but if you look to say how the Dark Below came out around December, and of course if we are aiming for 2017 and the game launches in September, then it's only sensible to think that it will probably come out somewhere around December. Now of course if you look back into Destiny's history, typically whenever there were say exclusive exotics, say PlayStation exclusives, apart from say Jade Rabbit, which is just taken forever to kind of come to Xbox, the main thing is normally those exclusive exotics come to the following platforms when the next DLC comes around. Now, if that is the case, then it may well be that December the 5th is not just an arbitrary date whereby, you know, you can start collecting the weapon. It might well be that is also the date that the DLC will drop. If that's the case, then it would mean that, you know, the Osiris DLC would drop, we start playing that. They will of course throw in the exotic that people have missed if they hadn't pre-ordered, and then of course it gives you a chance to kind of get something new. Plus for anyone that perhaps might not have picked up the game at launch and is considering waiting for some DLC, then that extra exotic being in kind of the mix might actually be the sort of cherry on the icing or the cherry on the cake to try and sort of, you know, further incentivize that purchase. Either way, just something to think about. Bear in mind, we do have a DLC for Destiny 2 slated to launch in winter this year, so given launch and given the kind of like typical gap they like to kind of leave before, you know, new content comes out, then I would be willing to bet somewhere around December is where we would see that Osiris expansion, and given that they've called out the 5th of December being a date of importance, then it could well be that. So again, to reiterate, it is a brand new exotic power weapon. It is referred to as a trace rifle. This will be the only trace rifle in Destiny 2 at launch, but they did again say it has the potential to become a new archetype, so we may well see more in the future. It fires a concentrated cold ice beam, which could potentially be a new element, but again at this stage we don't know, and the longer you fire it, the more damage it does. So of course it pays to keep that laser beam on the target, and of course try and concentrate it, fight the recoil, and then deal as much damage as possible. There will be recoil. They did say of course when you're firing the laser, it'll start to kick back, so you'll of course have to fight against that, but then if you can master that and you can kind of keep it focused, then you have the potential to dish out some serious damage. On top of that, if you actually go to PlayStation's website, the PlayStation Store website, they have a full list of pre-order bonuses. Now, some of these we have known about for a while. I actually mentioned them in a video in the past. The legendary or the kind of premium digital content, you get a legendary sword, a legendary player emote, and a Cabal Empire-themed emblem. Those three are not new. They've been there for quite some time. If you go onto any of the sites, they are listed there. However, the recently updated bit is at the top. Pre-order and receive the Coldheart exotic rifle that we've just spoken about, as well as a Kill Tracker Ghost. And if you look at this associated image, the Kill Tracker Ghost will track, tally, and showcase your legendary victories. Now, by legendary victories, we don't know whether that means kind of like PvE-focused things like, you know, raids or strikes or nightfalls or stuff like that, or whether it means you can kind of tailor it to, say, have stuff like, you know, your KD in the Crucible. The actual image has kind of two counters up there. It's got like numbers at the top and the bottom. One of them looks like a quest icon. The other one I can't really see because it's a little bit blurry. So I feel like this might instead be a way to try and sort of, you know, track like your quest progress. Kind of akin to Grimoire, but not the same because of course it doesn't look like Grimoire is making a return. So honestly, at this stage, we don't know the details, but it's essentially like an item you can have on yourself and then people can inspect it and they can then see your progress. So that's kind of cool. And of course, on top of that, you also have a salute emote and a dynamic theme. So these four items at the top, they were recently added when the trailer dropped today, when the IGN First article dropped today, and of course, that is effectively the entirety of your pre-order bonus. So for the time being, that's pretty much it. That is everything you need to know That is the new exotic weapon, that is when it's available, how it's available, and of course how it becomes available to everyone following pre-orders, and of course those additional items. If you did enjoy the video, then a like would be super appreciated. Any questions, drop them down below. And thanks for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.